Before we start our mailbag, quick request to go ahead and click the share button down below. Send our video to a friend or a family member that loves the Falcons. I'm just trying to grow this channel and get ourselves up to 35,000 subscribers. And one of the best ways to do that is to get more eyeballs on our content. Now, our first question is coming in on today's mailbag from a super chat, which, by the way, was during our live show every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. AJ asking, they have to cut or extend Kaleb McGary. Which do they do? I don't think they're going to extend him. I don't think they want to jump into bed long term with a new blindside tackle for Michael Penix after watching McGary and Penix overlap for the last 3 games of the season. I think the options are cut him and take $14 million in cap savings, or keep him, let him play out the rest of his contract. He's got 1 year left on it. And if he plays well and he proves to be a good pass protector in a new role, then you bring it back and you re-sign him. If he's still a run-first oriented tackle and it's just not working well with Penix as a lefty, then you make finding a new tackle your number one priority in the 2026 NFL draft. Jaden Fellows, if you were making the draft decisions, what would you do? This is my dream job right here. The draft is one of my favorite sporting events across all sporting. I love the draft more than March Madness. That sounds crazy. That's true. If I were Terry Fontenot and I'm making the picks and 15 rolls up and everyone with some level of realism is available, I think my pecking order I put out before is Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan. If he's gone, I would be interested in seeing if anyone wants to trade up. The Falcons need to get more draft picks. They only have 5 picks right now. A first, a second, a fourth, and 2 sevenths. If you can't find anyone to trade up with, I'm spending the next 2 months between 2 players. James Peterson out of Tennessee and Mike Green out of Marshall. And that is what I'm sinking my teeth into. And right now I'm leaning towards James Peterson out of Tennessee. Carson, do we move on from Kyle Pitts this season? I think no. Fontenot and Morris are in a prove-it year, and I think they need Pitts to break out instead of drafting another tight end and hoping he's good. I hear what you're saying, Carson, and you're making good points. I'm going to disagree. I think yes, for a few reasons. After the season was over, Terry Fontenot did not hold back on Kyle Pitts. Just flat out called him disappointing, underwhelming, saying he knows it. And you don't hear that often from coaches and GMs about players. They don't particularly like speaking to the media about their players. So when they go out of their way to throw one somewhat under the bus, that sounds alarm bells to me. I'm thinking they're looking at their $11 million salary cap hole they are in right now and seeing $10+ million in guaranteed money going to a tight end who was being outsnapped by Charlie Werner at times down the stretch last year. So I think they're going to take the cap savings, take the draft pick, and move on from Pitts altogether. Dirty Birds, could you see the Falcons trading for Myles Garrett? I could see the Falcons calling the Browns for Myles Garrett. I do not see the Cleveland Browns trading Myles Garrett away. Their GM, Andrew Berry, at the Senior Bowl made it explicitly clear that they are not interested in trading Garrett away. So, to be honest with you, no. I do not foresee Myles Garrett coming to Atlanta. He had made some comments about not wanting to be a part of a rebuild. So if he were to be open to being traded, do you guys think the 8-9 Falcons team would be at the top of his list? I'm not trying to poo-poo the Falcons, but if he wants to avoid a rebuild, I think he wants to go to a more guaranteed team, like someone who just made the playoffs or won a playoff game, not someone who is still trying to check the playoff appearance box. So honestly, I think there is a less than 1% chance that Garrett comes to Atlanta. Now, if you're the Falcons, would you offer up your 15th overall pick this year and your first-round pick next year for Myles Garrett? For me, I would, if I were Atlanta. If Myles Garrett entered this draft, he's not falling to 15. He's going top 3. I know he's pushing 30 years old soon, but he's still playing at a all-pro defensive player of the year type of level. So the Titans probably are looking for a quarterback, but he's not. He might just go right back to the Browns, number 2. Lav S, next one up. Will Raheem and Terry target physical traits over production in college? Great question, Lav. Hard to say with Raheem. We just don't have enough data points as to players he likes in the draft. With Fontenot, though, we're talking about someone who was a scout with the New Orleans Saints. So that's a type of GM that likes to build within the draft. That's not the case for all GMs, though. And I think if you are someone who is building within the draft, then you're actually maybe more open-minded for all types of prospects. Let me elaborate. If you're a GM who likes to build maybe a little bit through trades and free agency, you might look at the draft as too big of an unknown. So you're going to take the best athletes and trust your coaches to develop them. But if you're a GM who came up the draft or came up the scout pipeline, then you're going to look at the draft and you're going to bet on your eyes a lot, right? You're going to go with the eye test and go, I watched this kid and I know he's good and I don't care what he ran at the combine or what his tests came back from at the Senior Bowl in his interviews. So I don't think they are people that just exclusively look at physical traits. They did that with Rook, but with Michael Penix, it wasn't like he was just completely, sculpted from God as an athlete. He got a cannon of an arm, but he's not some terrific runner or anything like that. You look at Braylon Trice, he was a very productive player at Washington. Not the greatest athlete. We just only have one draft to go off of, but I'm leaning towards no, Lav. Jeremy, which of the current players in the roster do you think have the highest possibility of being cap casualties? I'd say Kaleb McGary and David Onyemata. I would be willing to bet that they bring back Grady Jarrett because of his role in the locker room. Onyemata is 33, 32, $8 million in cap savings, whereas McGary, 29, 1 year left on his deal, and $14 million in cap savings. Those are two guys that I could see being a big cap casualty just because of the savings, not because they are no longer good players. Thomas, do the Falcons grab a wide receiver for their first pick in the draft? No, absolutely not. There is not a receiver in this draft class that would go in the first round of last year's draft class. Seriously. Like Teteroa McMillan out of Arizona, if he was in last year's draft class, Marvin Harrison goes before him. Malik Neighbors goes before him. Rome Odunze goes before him. Brian Thomas goes before him. I don't think T-Mac goes in the first round of last year's draft class. Now, he might go round one this year because someone's just going to be that desperate for a wide receiver. But I don't see T-Mac and, hey, the draft is a crapshoot. I don't have a crystal ball. All this could look really dumb in a few years, and I'll be cold takes exposed. I don't see McMillan as a receiver that's going to be a true big difference maker for a team. We're going to look at more questions in just a moment, but first things first, a big special shout out to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has an awesome feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So if you want to go to a Hawks game, for example, download the Game Time app and you can see all the great deals they have going on at State Farm Arena. You can see flash deals and zone deals. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. I put all that information for you guys in the comments and description of today's video. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Stuart, given all the ridiculous success of UGA players in the NFL, especially in recent years defensively, why do the Falcons rarely pick Georgia players? I understand the question. Let's kind of go through it case by case because I don't think that there's an agenda in Flowery Branch to just boycott Athens. Last year, it was clear the Falcons fell in love with Michael Penix, and that was what they were going to go to in round one. They did end up taking Zion Logue for what it's worth in round 6. Now, I don't have off the top of my head memory of when they took their day 2 and day 3 picks, where Georgia Bulldogs went before or after. I really liked, if I remember correctly, Kamari Lassiter, the corner, last year, and they took Rook. If they could do it over again, I think they take Kamari for how good he was with the Texans. So, point to you there. Year before that, they went Bijan in round 1. I think that was Arthur Smith going, we're going to run the football, and we have a generational type running back. Not a diss against any Bulldogs out there, but that's what we want to do. And then the year before that, they needed a new wide receiver as they moved on from Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, and Drake London has turned out to be a great pick for them. So I get what you're saying, and some of it's probably just a little bit of we had a bigger priority in the first round and it did not include defense. If they go the next 3 years and take defenders in the first round and don't take a Bulldog, you'll have a better case, Stuart. Gary, the Marshall guy won't be there at 15. Gary, I love this because it's January and GMs don't even know who they're taking. But we know who they're taking. And I'm not saying this to ridicule or mock you. This is why I really love the NFL draft. Gary is no smarter than I am when it comes to who's going to go where in this NFL draft. Like, it's a crapshoot. If I had told you if Gary had messaged me last year this time saying there won't be a defender off the board the first 14 picks, we would have laughed at you. So, Gary, he might not be there at 15. He is rising up boards with the way he performed at the Senior Bowl. He's the FBS sack leader last year. I think the concern that some teams are going to have is, even though I don't think it's a concern, maybe they just count him a pick or two because of him playing at Marshall, which I think is dumb. They might have concerns a little bit over the size because I do think he projects to be an outside linebacker. I don't think he's big enough to be a true Calais Campbell defensive end. At 251 pounds, he would need to add a little bit of weight. So if a few teams picking in the top 14 that are looking for an edge rusher don't think he'd be a good fit in their system, but someone else could, I could see Green falling as a result. But time will tell, Gary. We will find out in April. Jesse Joyner 80. If you had to make a trade for the Falcons, what would it look like? Player for player, player for draft picks. How about this one? Ready? How about Kyle Pitts for Sam Hubbard? Or Kyle Pitts for Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals? Kyle Pitts for a draft pick from Cincinnati. The Bengals are probably looking for a new weapon. They need help at tight end, although Gesicki played well for them last year, so maybe they don't need that much help. But they are likely losing T. Higgins. So I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to make a move for a tight end like Kyle Pitts to keep the passing attack up for Joe Burrow, and they're not going to be paying Trey Hendrickson or Sam Hubbard what they are looking for, and I could see the Falcons having interest, so that might be a kind of a rare starter for starter swap. You hardly ever see that. Is Villa, what are some of the easier fixes this offseason? Well, the fixes have to come defensively. And I think if we're talking about where you want to start on defense, it's got to be the pass rush. So the easier fixes, I'm not quite sure what you have in mind, but I would say going pass rusher in round 1 and double dipping as well in free agency and bringing in guys who can actually do the job. One name, I'm a little thrown off by what you're really looking for behind this question because I don't know if there's a simple fix. Like, bring back D. Alford. I know that's not a very popular answer, but he's an exclusive rights free agent. The Falcons can make him a qualifying offer, which is a vet minimum deal, and he can either take it or retire and go work elsewhere. Like, meaning go work at Chick-fil-A or the post office. Like, not play football. So that might be too good of a value for the Falcons to pass on. That's maybe my easier answer for you, but I'm sure it's not quite what you had in mind. Some of them Nuggets. Can Grady Jarrett be good trade capital for a splash trade rather than cutting him? Who's going to trade for him? He's got 1 year left on his deal. He's 32 years old. He's got like a $16-ish million base salary. I don't know who's lining up. Why would you trade? How about this? The draft pick you used to acquire Grady Jarrett, just used on a defensive line in this year's class. It's a loaded class, and you get someone for longer, for cheaper, and younger. I don't think you're going to find a trade partner. Plus, you really want to trade? That's okay. Do you really want to trade your kind of captain of the defense in a lot of ways? may not be a good message to the rest of the team and the fan base. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, subscribe, like the video as well, and I'll be sure to catch up with all of you later.